He was asked once what he would do first if he were given authority to govern. The question was political. The expected answer was political. Military policy, economic reform, the reorganization of the administrative structures that running a state requires. He said, "I would rectify names." His student thought this was a joke, said, "Really, of all things, names?" Confucius said, "If names are not correct, speech will not accord with truth. If speech does not accord with truth, affairs cannot be accomplished. If affairs cannot be accomplished, ritual and music will not flourish. If ritual and music do not flourish, punishments will not be just. If punishments are not just, the people will not know where to put their hands and feet." Therefore, he said, with the patient, slightly weary tone of a teacher who has explained this too many times to be surprised by the confusion it produces, the superior person is careful about names above all things and insists that what is said correspond to what is true. This exchange, recorded in the Analects, the collected conversations of Confucius preserved by his students, is the entry point into a philosophy so different from Western philosophy in its orientation that most Western readers initially mistake it for something simpler than it is. It is not a philosophy of the individual, not of the self in isolation, the self working out its relationship to abstract principles, the self finding its inner truth and then expressing it outward. It is a philosophy of the self in relationship, of the person who becomes fully human not through solitude or private contemplation, but through the quality of their presence in the community that surrounds them. And the question it asks, the question that Confucius spent his entire life pressing on rulers and students and followers and the civilization he was trying to repair, is the one this script was built around. Not who are you, but who does your community need you to become?
The modern world has given us an almost entirely private account of self-development, the journey inward, the discovery of the authentic self beneath the social performance, the peeling away of what others need you to be in order to find at the center what you truly, deeply, independently are. This is not wrong exactly. The inner life is real. The authentic self is real. The damage done by a life lived entirely in performance of others' expectations, without any private center from which to operate, is real and considerable. But Confucius looked at this inward account and noticed something it was missing, something so central to his understanding of what a human being actually is, that its absence for him would have made the entire project not self-discovery at all, but a sophisticated form of self-abandonment. He noticed that the self does not exist prior to relationship, is not formed in isolation and then brought to the community as a finished product, is constituted by the relationships it inhabits, shaped by them, revealed by them, made more or less fully itself, depending on the quality of care and attention and commitment it brings to them. The person who has done the inner work and has nothing to show for it in their relationships, their community, their daily practice of showing up as the person their world needs, has not, in Confucius's understanding, done the inner work at all, has mistaken the map for the territory. Kong Chu, whom the Western world calls Confucius, a Latinized version of Kong Fuzi, Master Kong, was born in 551 BC in the state of Lu, in what is now Shandong province in eastern China. He was born into a time of extraordinary disorder. The Shao dynasty, which had provided the overarching political structure of Chinese civilization for centuries, was in terminal decline. The feudal lords of the various states were at war with each other. The ritual and social structures that had organized Chinese society, the elaborate system of ceremonies, relationships, and mutual obligations that Confucius would spend his life defending, were breaking down. He was not an aristocrat, though he had minor noble ancestry. He worked his way up through the administrative structure of Lu through a combination of genuine brilliance and the kind of systematic self-cultivation that he would later teach as the primary human obligation. He spent 13 years traveling the states of China, trying to find a ruler who would implement his philosophy of governance. Was rejected everywhere, as we noted when we discussed the Tao of Failure, the 13 years that looked like failure and were the making of everything. He returned home at 68, taught students, edited the classical texts, and left behind, in the conversations his students preserved, the most influential philosophical system in the history of East Asian civilization. A system that has shaped Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese culture for 2,500 years, and that is, in its deepest structure, about something so simple and so demanding that it takes a lifetime to even begin to practice.
The central concept of Confucian philosophy is Ren, usually translated as benevolence or humaneness or loving others. But the translation always loses something, because Ren is not a feeling. It is not the warm, spontaneous, gentle, emotionally generated care that the word benevolence suggests. Ren is a practice, a daily, specific, effortful practice of bringing your full human capacity, your intelligence, your attention, your willingness to put the other person's flourishing at the center of your concern, to the relationships that constitute your world. Confucius was asked about Ren constantly. His students asked him about it the way students always ask about the central term of the philosophy they are learning, eagerly, hoping for a definition that will settle the question once and for all. He never gave one, gave a different answer every time, calibrated to the specific student asking, because Ren, in his understanding, is not a concept to be defined. It is a capacity to be developed, and what its development requires depends entirely on what the specific person in front of you is currently lacking. To one student, he said, Ren is to love others. To another, Ren is not to do to others what you do not want done to yourself. To a third, Ren is to be respectful at home, serious at work, and faithful with everyone. Different answers, same direction. The practice of bringing yourself, all of yourself, not the convenient portion, not the portion that costs nothing, to the human world you are actually inhabiting. There is a concept in the Analects that I want to stay with, because it is the most practically demanding idea in Confucian philosophy, and the one that the modern world has the greatest difficulty absorbing. The concept of the Junzi, usually translated as the gentleman, the exemplary person, the superior man, though the gendered translation is misleading, since Confucius's point is about a quality of character available to any person who does the work, regardless of birth or sex or social position. The Junzi is the person who is always in process, always becoming, who approaches each day with the specific, humble, completely undefended awareness that the self they are is not yet the self they could be, and who uses every available relationship, every ritual, every encounter with the demands of the community as material for the ongoing project of becoming more fully human. Confucius says the exemplary person is not a vessel, by which he means the exemplary person is not a fixed container of a fixed set of skills and capacities, is not finished, does not arrive at a point of mastery and stay there. The exemplary person is always beginning again,
always bringing the quality of attention that finds in each relationship and each day something new to practice and something old to deepen.
He said, "Is it not a pleasure, having learned something, to try it out at due intervals? The learning that becomes practice, the practice that deepens the learning, the continuous cycle of becoming that does not arrive at a destination, because the destination is the practice itself." The Analects are full of failures. This is, I think, the least discussed and most important thing about them. Confucius's students fail constantly. They misunderstand his teachings. They apply the principles badly. They ask questions that reveal they have missed the point entirely. And Confucius, with the specific patience of a teacher who genuinely believes that the capacity for growth is present in every person in front of him, corrects them, clarifies, tries again. And Confucius himself fails. This is rarer, but it is there. The 13 years of political rejection, the moments when his own grief overwhelms the equanimity he teaches, the death of his favorite student Yan Hui, who was, by Confucius's own account, closer to genuine Ren than his teacher, at which Confucius wept with a completeness that his other students thought was excessive. He said, "If not for him, for whom should I weep excessively?" The man who taught that the exemplary person maintains composure, weeping excessively for the student who embodied what the teaching was pointing toward, not performing grief, inhabiting it, because the relationship was real, because Ren, the practice he had spent his life teaching, is not the management of feeling, it is the complete, full-hearted presence to what is actually here. Now the bridge. Because Confucius was writing for a specific civilization in a specific crisis, the collapse of the Zhou dynasty's social and ritual order, the disintegration of the structures that had organized Chinese society for centuries. Most of us are not navigating the collapse of a dynasty, but most of us are living in communities, families, workplaces, neighborhoods, relationships that have their own versions of disorder, their own equivalents of the rectification of names that goes undone, their own failures of Ren, of the full-hearted, genuinely present, completely committed quality of care and attention that the community needs and is not quite receiving. And most of us have been oriented by the culture of individual self-development primarily toward the question of what we are becoming for ourselves, how our inner work is progressing, how our authentic self is being expressed, how the life we are building serves our own growth, our own flourishing, our own becoming. Confucius does not dismiss this orientation. He simply adds the other half of it, the half that the modern world has largely dropped. The becoming is for the community. The inner work shows up in the relationships. The self that has been developed through years of learning and practice and the systematic cultivation of character, the test of it, the whole of it, the place where it either is real or is revealed to have been an elaborate private project, is here. In this relationship, in this family, in this community, in the quality of presence you are bringing to the people who need it from you right now. Here is what Confucius asks of you, practically, today. First, rectify one name. In your most important relationships, in your workplace, in your community, find one place where what is being said does not accord with what is true, where the name being used does not correspond to the reality it is supposed to describe. Not to create conflict, to do what Confucius understood as the foundation of everything else, to insist gently and clearly and with the full weight of your commitment to accuracy that the language match the reality. The relationship called a friendship that functions as an obligation. The work called a team that functions as a collection of isolated individuals.
the commitment called a priority that receives the time and attention of an afterthought. Name it correctly, once, and notice what becomes possible when the speech accords with the truth. Second, practice Ren in one specific relationship this week. Not generally, not as a diffuse intention to be more loving or more present or more attentive to the people in your life. One relationship, one specific person, and the specific practice of bringing your full human capacity, your complete attention, your genuine curiosity about their inner life, your willingness to put their flourishing at the center of your concern, rather than at the periphery of your own, to every encounter with them this week. Notice what changes in them and in you, because this is Confucius's deepest claim, that the practice of Ren toward another person is also the development of the self that is capable of Ren. The two are not separate projects.
Third, identify the community that needs you to become something you are not yet. Confucius spent his life becoming what his civilization needed, not what was comfortable, not what his natural talents pointed toward without effort, what the specific, actual, currently broken community in front of him required of the most developed version of who he could be. Ask, what does the community I actually inhabit need from me that I am not yet capable of giving? Not what it needs from someone else, what it needs from me, from the specific combination of experience and capacity and position that makes my contribution irreplaceable. And then, with the Junzi's complete openness to being in process, begin becoming that. Fourth, find your Yan Wei. Yan Wei was Confucius's favorite student not because he was the most talented, though he was among the most talented, but because he was the most committed to the practice, the one who took the teaching seriously enough to attempt to live it completely, whose poverty did not diminish his joy, whose failures did not discourage his return to the practice, who embodied, more than anyone else in the circle, what Ren actually looks like in a daily life. There is someone in your life, or someone who could be in your life, who is doing the work, who is genuinely committed to the practice of becoming more fully human in their relationships and their community, who takes seriously the things you take seriously, and who is further along in some dimension of the practice than you currently are. Find them, learn from them, be changed by the quality of their commitment, and be, for someone else, the Yan Hui that they have not yet found. I want to close with the passage in the Analects that I have returned to more than any other. It is short. It comes near the beginning of the text. It is the passage that Confucius's students preserved first, before the political philosophy, before the discussions of ritual, before the elaborate articulation of the Junzi ideal. He said, "Is it not pleasant to learn with a constant perseverance and application? Is it not delightful to have friends coming from distant quarters? Is he not a man of complete virtue who feels no discomposure, though men may take no notice of him?" 3 questions, 3 pleasures. Not the pleasures of achievement or recognition or the arrival at a position of social confirmation. The pleasure of learning that continues. The pleasure of friends who come from a distance to share what they have been learning. And the pleasure, the deepest one, the most demanding one, of complete virtue that does not require notice to remain complete. He is not noticed. He has failed politically. He has spent 13 years being turned away by every ruler he approached and has returned home to teach students in relative obscurity. And he is, not despite this, not performing equanimity about this, but genuinely, fully, as a matter of philosophical conviction, pleasant, delighted, a man of complete virtue.
not because the world has confirmed him, because the practice is its own confirmation, because the Ren he has been developing, in the relationships, in the learning, in the daily, unglamorous, completely serious work of becoming the person his community needs, does not require the world's acknowledgement to be real. It is real. It is its own reward, and it compounds in the community, in the students, in the 2,500 years of civilization that his teaching shaped, in ways he could not have seen from the room where he was teaching.
Here is the question Confucius leaves us with today. Not from the throne he never occupied, from the classroom, from the conversations preserved by students who understood they were in the presence of something that should not be lost. Who does the community that surrounds you, your family, your workplace, your neighborhood, the people whose lives are shaped by your presence or your absence, need you to become? Not who are you already, not who you are becoming for yourself. Who, with full commitment, with the practice of Ren, with the Junzi's complete and humble openness to being always in process, do they need from you? Leave that in the comments, because that answer, your Confucian answer, specific and relational and pointing outward, is not a small thing. It is the rectification of the most important name, the one that is yours. I'll see you in the next one.